were shocked yet again, this time around by DR Congo, who stopped them and progressed to the quarterfinals of the competition. And Guinea was the winner in the Battle of the Guineas with a last-minute, last-ditch, heartbreaking winner over Equatorial Guinea, where the top scorer of the competition is out. We're looking back on all of the action from the weekend's run of 16 matches. And of course, we also look ahead to today's quarterfinal, today's run of 16 games, where some 2 more teams will be joining the quarterfinal list. And the biggest game in that lineup, of course, is Senegal, defending champions, against CoteD'voire, the host nation. That's what is on the menu today here on the show. Of course, it's live and interactive on all of our social media platforms. So you're welcome to send in your thoughts here on the show. We'll take a very short break. Of course, remember the show is proudly sponsored by MTN. MTN everywhere you go. We'll take a short break. When we come back, I've got some guests here, and then I'll introduce them, of course, before we get the analysis on the road. Welcome back. This is AFCON Today, live on Joy 99.7 FM. It's our daily AFCON show. It's also live on the Joy News channel as well as on the Joy Prime TV channel. Both channels on DSTV, of course. Now, it's time to talk AFCON knockout rounds. And, of course, I've got my man here, Fentuo and Atsu, joining us this afternoon. How are you?
I'm great, my brother. How are you?
You're right, huh?
Yeah.
Fantastic football over the weekend. Perfect for anybody who doesn't like going out. It had everything.
It had everything. Often we talk about how when it comes to tournaments like this, you essentially have a mini tournament within it. So you have the group stage and then the knockout stage. The group stage showed us some of the best football we've seen in the history of the AFCON. And just when we thought in the knockout stage, because the stakes are higher, teams are going to be a bit more technical, a bit more tactical and pragmatic. While doing that, teams still managed to offer us some brilliant entertainment. And the Angola game especially gave us everything we wanted to see. And then there was the Equatorial Guinea and the dramatic finish that match also had. So, yeah, so far it's been full of entertainment.
Let's just remind you of the results from the weekend in case you missed any game in particular from the run of 16 matches from the Africa Cup of Nations. 4 games have been played already, 2 on Saturday. The first game on Saturday saw Angola beat Namibia by 3-0. And it was a game in which, of course, Gelson Dala scored a brace, and he became the first Angolan player to score 4 goals in an AFCON tournament since Manucho did it back in 2008. In which country?
Ghana.
Right here in Ghana. So Gelson Dala is having a tournament to remember. That's now 2 braces he scored. Also scored a brace against Mauritania, and now he scored a brace in knockout football against Namibia. They won that comfortably by 3-0. Namibia's fairy tale run has come to an end, and all that noise about campaign in Ghana doing teams good is also now being quashed.
It did them good because in the history of Namibia, they have never made it to the knockout stage of the AFCON before.
So it was beneficial in the end.
It was beneficial.
We'll talk about that game shortly. But the other game on Saturday saw Nigeria beat Cameroon by 2-0. And this was a very surprising result, mostly because of the way the game was. Nigeria absolutely deserved to win this game. Cameroon were all over the place, didn't show up. Vincent Abubakar came in late, no impact at all. And Victor Osimhen reminded all of us that you don't always have to score to be contributing or to be seen to be contributing to your team. And yet again, he's still looking for his first goal of this tournament. But Nigerians...
Second goal, here's one.
His second goal, sorry, he scored 1. His second goal of the tournament, but Nigerians would be thankful that he's in this team. So they won that comfortably.
And the scenes after the match, look, we have great players. And we have players who are born with that natural ability to connect with fans. Ghana has it with Mohamed Kudus. Osimhen, the adulation that the fans give him is through the roof. And I was watching the videos after the game, and he was taking the lap of honor, and while the fans were applauding the team, it was only Osimhen
He's a true star.
He's a true star.
You know, and to be fair, when it comes to Ghana, I think like there are some players that are just born natural superstars, and you can't take it from them. Abedi is one.
Yeah.
Jean is one.
Jean is one.
Andre Ayew
is
probably the biggest one.
Stephen Appiah is one.
Kudus, like you rightly said, is another. They're just like star players, and you know, it's just an aura that you can't buy.
It's the aura. Look, I was watching the video of Andre at the Felix Ofe-Boigny airport when the team touched down a few weeks ago, and then when the maestro went
even when they got kicked out.
Yes, and the maestro went to pick them at the Kotoka International Airport. You could tell for a lot of those women there, they don't like football.
No.
But it's just the personality of Andre Ayew and the fact that they feel comfortable around him, and when they see him, they lose their mind.
It's just natural, and I think the latest crop is Kudus that has it, and he's a big star as well. On Sunday as well, so that's that. We'll get back to these games shortly. Let me take you through the full results. On Sunday, there were 2 games as well. The first match was at 5 p.m. It was a battle of the Guineas, Equatorial Guinea, who had been the tournament's top scorers so far in this competition and surprised everybody, actually topped a group that had both Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire, up against Guinea, who somehow, if you like, maybe scraped through to the round of 16. And this was a very interesting match because it appeared to be going the way of Equatorial Guinea when they got awarded a penalty. Who else should take? Emilio Insue, top scorer. He couldn't miss that, obviously. His confidence is sky high. Well, he missed it.
He did.
Didn't he?
He did.
And then just when it appeared, then they had a man sent off for a very silly foul. Then when it appeared like the game was going into extra time, Guinea popped up with the win in the 98th minute. That was heartbreaking.
Mohamed Dayer's goal. And for me, it is one of those things that show you that you stick to the plan no matter what, no matter when. Because seconds before the match ends, players can switch off because in their minds, we are preparing for extra time, right? So they can switch off. They can stop being adventurous. But he stayed in that zone. He stayed between the space between the 2 centre-backs. The player out wide did not delay, did not try to while away time and then wait for the extra time whistle. They stuck to the blueprint, and then it paid off.
Literally stolen from in behind. And then the day's late game, the one that kept us all up till midnight. 2 teams that have not won a game in this tournament. I have still not won a game in regulation time. Egypt drew all 3 matches in the group stages. So did DR Congo. They also drew all 3 matches in the group stages. Both qualified to the knockout round and then played at a draw. A 1-1 draw before eventually DR Congo won it by 8-7 in the shootout. It's quite dramatic because Egypt had Abu Gabal in goal. Most people know him as Gabaski. He was the hero when Egypt made it all the way to the final in 2022 at AFCON 2021, which was played in 2022. And so for the majority of the extra time, Egypt appeared to have been playing for the shootout. They were wasting a lot of the chances. They were wasting a lot of time. And then it looked like once he got to the penalty shootout, it was Diaz. It wasn't.
It wasn't.
It was the DR Congo goalkeeper who plays in League 2 who stole the headlines.
And when we get into the discussion properly, I would explain why it is not the smartest idea to bank your hopes on a penalty shootout. Because the penalty shootout by design favors the players who take it. So yes, you can be confident in the abilities of your own players. But the idea that a goalkeeper has made a name or made a career out of saving penalty shootout, you can't always rely on that because you are essentially banking on hope and luck. And that is what it is. The goalkeepers cannot tell with certainty where or which direction the ball will move in for them to then
literally dove in the same direction.
All the time. And
those of you watching on TV, we'll show you a little later. But let's begin by showing you highlights of this game between Angola and Namibia. I think when you look at all the knockout matches and all the fixtures of the round of 16, this probably, and you can disagree if you want, but this looks like the more straightforward affair, in my opinion, mostly because of Namibia's inability to contest, really, when it comes to teams in their region. Because we saw them do well against Tunisia, and then they lose so horribly to South Africa. And once we discussed and we said, these guys don't do well when they come up against teams in their region. And we were dead spot on.
I think one of the things that have failed Namibia is the inexperience. And also, I think Shalulile let them down. This is the first time in the history of Namibia that they've made it to the knockout stage of the competition. Yeah. So obviously, the nerves are going to affect the team. The weight of expectations may be too much for them to carry because they've not experienced this before. They don't know how to deal with it. But the bigger issue for me was Peter Shalulile and the chances that he's had in these tournaments, that he somehow almost always fails to put those chances away. What that means is that, and if you look at Namibia pre-tournament, 70% of the entire game plan is around Shalulile.
Yes.
Him, Dion Hoto tries to cover the chances for him, which he has, if you go back to the games that they've played in this tournament. But the ability to put the ball in the back of the net has simply been non-existent. And some of the chances that he has missed in this tournament has been criminal. Conversely, Angola are building on the expansive nature of the football that we've seen them play in the last 24 months. So when we watched them against Crescenton's Black Stars in that first game at the Barbara Sports Stadium around this time last year, and Ghana struggled to break them down. A lot of us faulted the Black Stars. To a certain extent, we were right. But what we also failed to do was to credit Angola for being the tactically sound units that have clearly fashioned out how players like Mabulu, players like Dala have come into this team and have become the mainstay. So they can take the game. And you know, one of the things that I like about Angola is that they know they are not going to dominate you for 90 minutes. Matches are won in moments, and they know how to strike while the rod is hot. So they create those moments, get that between 60 to 90-second momentum. And sometimes in football, that's all you need. They get that, and they will keep pounding away until something gives. And I think in this game, they managed that quite well. And when the opportunities came, they took them without missing them.
Listen, one of the things I absolutely loved about this Angola team, and this game in particular, is the way every single goal is scored.
Yeah.
Every single goal was well rehearsed. Team effort.
Goal of the month contest.
Brilliantly done. Yeah. And that Mbalulu finish. Listen.
Electronic sports, FIFA 24 stuff.
It's unreal. And it's a skill that I've seen maybe Asamoah Gyan perfect, in his playing days.
Luis Suarez as well.
Luis Suarez too. You must have a lot of confidence to be trying things like that in this game. Having said that, is that why we should consider Angola a very dangerous proposition? Because it looks like they're playing without fear at all.
I think they will be dangerous for every team. When it comes to, look, in football, the most dangerous teams are not always the most talented teams, but there are those teams who are very tactically sound, well coached, have a significant appreciation of what the opponent brings on board and how they can create the right tactical context for their key players to thrive. If you watch the game on Saturday, they did not get into a lot of unnecessary duels. And that is one of the problems I have with our Black Stars and someone like Antoine Semenyo, and how, because of his size and his pace, he wants to get very physical. They don't, as a centre forward, you don't need that. I mean, for someone like Mabululu, he understood that stay in your space. The team will create the separation for you, so they can create overloads on one end of the pitch, quickly switch play, and if you stay disciplined, you are going to find yourself 1v1 with the defender, sometimes 1v1 with the goalkeeper. That chance comes, you take it. And I like the fact that when you watch this Angolan team, when they realize that there's a chance for them to go on and express themselves, against Algeria, we saw it, they didn't hesitate. Because, as I've said, football is played in moments. You're not going to walk into the game and dominate for 90 minutes. Even the greatest teams of all time don't have that. So when you get into your moments, you need to do everything possible to stay in that moment and, more importantly, maximize it. And if you've watched Angola, you'd realize that they don't create too many chances against the run of play. Often when the chance will come, you'd realize that within a 2 or 3 minute spell, they have been knocking. They had been showing signs that they wanted to create something similar. So while the goal may not be a carbon copy of everything they've been rehearsing pre that incident, you would see traces of that. So the runs, the diagonal runs that the players would make, the runs off the shoulder of defenders that the strikers will make, the combination, the passing sequences that result in the goal. All of those are things that you're going to see. And critics are going to say that is robotic football, that is too choreographed. But if you take that away from Angola, what really do they have? So they're a team that is very well coached, and they know what their strengths are, and they are not prepared to deviate from that for any reason.
You know, for me, like, the most impressive thing about this Angola team is they don't necessarily have players who are playing at the biggest leagues in the world. And it says everything you need to know about what it takes to build a national team. And that the national team doesn't have to be a collection of big players playing for top teams around the world. A national team is a cohesion. The chemistry is what is really important. A collective, the unit, a collection of people that are willing to die for their country. And when you consider that this is the same Angola team that we beat in Kumasi and held away from home, and you see how much better off they are just a few months later, and you see how much worse off we are, then you ask yourself, what exactly happened? Because it's the same Angola coach. They didn't change the coach. Same players. In fact, one of their best players didn't come for the competition.
No.
He was in Kumasi tormenting Gideon Mensah left, right, and center. He opted to stay for his club side because he said he wanted to concentrate on club football. Yeah. He didn't even come for the competition. And they've pulled a player from Al Wakra in Qatar, Gelson Dalla. You see him, you think that he's playing some top-level football elsewhere. He plays in Qatar. He plays in the Qatari Stars League for Al Wakra. Mabululu.
The guys who have excelled in this tournament don't come from the teams that you.
They do not. They do not. So it's not necessarily about playing for top clubs. It's the application of that talent, and if you can't put yourself and dedicate yourself to the cause, your skill alone is not going to carry you far. So Angola, Atsu, they might have had this easy. Surely their biggest test yet of this competition will be in the quarterfinals when they come up against Nigeria. Yeah. Nigeria, they played against Cameroon on Saturday as well. And it was one of those matches that was very much anticipated for all of the storylines that are involved. Cameroon and Nigeria have met so many times at AFCON. Last time they met in an AFCON final, you had to go back to 2000 when Cameroon snatched the title away from them in Surulere. So they've been looking for revenge for a while, and they got it. In this match, Nigeria more than deserved the win. They were all over Cameroon, or more like Cameroon were just poor. I don't know how to approach it. Yes, Nigeria were brilliant, but Cameroon didn't help themselves either. Like this mistake for the Osimhen goal. Yeah. What was he thinking?
So there are a number of things that
Osimhen goal, Osimhen assist, but
sure. Ademola Lookman goal. There are a number of things that came together for Nigeria very beautifully. The first of them for me was not tactical. None of those tactical nonsense. It was just the sheer application and desire.
Exactly.
So the pressing that you saw from Ademola Lookman, what you saw from Osimhen especially, you don't teach those, right? Yes, you can tell your players that this is how we move. We are going to press in a coordinated manner. When we lose possession, we all move together or we step back 5 yards in between each player and all of that. But when the game starts and Cameroon have the ball 30 yards inside their own half from the center line, your default position, especially for a Nigerian team, and here's the paradox of everything that we saw. Yeah. Nigeria are a very defensive team in this tournament. For context's sake, when Nigeria needed to beat Guinea-Bissau to qualify, Nigeria fielded 5 defenders against Guinea-Bissau. 5 defenders against Guinea-Bissau.
This team's strength on paper is their attack.
Yes. 5 defenders against Guinea-Bissau in a game, in a tournament where Guinea-Bissau are essentially the whipping boys. But that is the mentality of the manager. He is risk averse. He doesn't want to give away chances. If you look through this tournament, the numbers back that. Yeah. They have only conceded an XG of 1.23.
Unbelievable.
Yes. Which is similar to what they did at the AFCON.
In 4 matches?
Yes, in 4 matches. An XG of 1.23 before yesterday. And it is similar to what they did at the AFCON in 2021 when they conceded just 1 goal before the round of 16 match when they lost to Tunisia. So they are a team that is very defensive. And yet, when they were pressing, when Osimhen applied himself, you would think that he had the whole pack of the team behind him. And for him, this was his desire. He made about himself to torment the team, right? And one of the things that I also liked was that Peseiro did not try to cage him by saying, don't exert yourself too much. And it's a very tempting thing for coaches to say to superstars, especially strikers on the continent, and say that don't try to waste your energy or any of that. But they apply themselves. The other part of it for me was that Cameroon were simply not good enough. So we saw the mistakes that they made.
That much was clear.
Yes, that much was clear. But to properly explain it, they did not stretch the Nigerian team. They did not ask the questions that we thought could pose problems for them, because up until yesterday, the Nigerian team has not conceded a lot of chances because they defend comfortably within their zone. So teams are not able to stretch them. Every time the Nigerian team moves, when it is Zaidu Sanusi, Ola Aina, when Calvin Bassey has...
Sanusi was not that great.
He wasn't that great, but he looks...
His end product is very questionable.
When he has the ball, then you begin to see the defects in his game. But when he has to defend, you realize that he isn't terrible. And it's not because he's a great defender. It's because the team has been arranged such that he is close to the nearest defender. And there's always a midfielder close by to ensure that even if you want to play the 1-2 or try to draw rings around him, he has enough protective cover. So anytime Nigeria had to defend, they were defending in a very comfortable zone. What Cameroon could have done to stretch them was perhaps get the ball wide and get their wide players to be a bit involved in the play, combined with a midfielder or two, stretch that defense and maybe send in some crosses.
But that would not have even brought any success, because Nigeria are the best when it comes to dealing with crosses.
In this tournament.
So far in this tournament.
And when you have to consider that Cameroon went to war with their second choice attack in Karl Toko Ekambi and whoever the other guy's name, you would have to then concede that, you know what, there's a limit to what damage Cameroon can inflict by deciding to go route one and sending in those scores. And they look like a very limited team. And I think that the signs were there. If you look at their second game that they played, their first game against Guinea, when Guinea had the red card, and for 60 minutes, Cameroon could not break them down. What was the approach? They sent in 26 crosses. 26. And what that says is that this is a team that is very limited when it comes to creating chances. And they are bent on sending in crosses to players who haven't earned a reputation as being able to convert chances of that nature.
And then the last game, they got success through crosses.
Yes.
With 3-headed goals. Was it 2?
Against Guinea-Bissau.
Against Guinea-Bissau.
But as we have established, they are the worst team from that group in the tournament.
True story. For Nigeria, Angola will be a completely different team to deal with. Yeah. There were some top performers in this game. Osimhen, obviously. Peseiro said after the game that a young lady came up to him and said that Osimhen wasn't scoring, and that if he wanted to progress, you should drop him. He said he just looked at her and said, "Thank you very much for your advice." And then he went ahead to play him. He didn't score, obviously, but he created the goal and so much more. Ademola Lookman, he has to take his flowers.
He has to.
And especially that second goal.
Exactly. I like the fact that he has been able to contribute at this stage of the tournament, not in a dead rubber game. Pre-tournaments, all the commentary was about how Nigeria's other stars are not able to assume responsibility and share the goal-scoring burden with Osimhen. So Samuel Chukwueze, Simon Moses, what's his name? Lookman himself, in the past, have not exactly been as assertive as we saw him do over the weekend for Nigeria. And it is good for them, because in a tournament like this, you're going to need your key actors to assume responsibility on the pitch. Your main strikers are not always going to score. When you have that many, as Nigeria do, you would bank on the fact that at the very least, one or two of them will step up. And in the round of 16, Lookman paid his dues.
And the good thing about this Nigeria team is, like we mentioned already, Osimhen and Lookman, there's so many players having a really good tournament.
Yeah.
I can mention at least 6 of them who are having an absolute ball. I don't think Truzakon has put a foot wrong.
No, he hasn't. And
in this competition.
Look, before the tournament, some Nigerians were talking on Twitter about one of the players they've grown to respect, which is Truzakon. He did not have a lot of education in Nigeria.
No.
He didn't spend too much time in the formative years in the youth teams in Nigeria. But when he plays, he demonstrates a certain appreciation of the values people want to see a player reflect when they put on the Nigerian jersey, which is rare to find for a player who didn't grow up in the country. Yeah. And for that, I will always respect him. I respect the effort.
His body on the line.
His body on the line. And it's not just brawn. It's not just rush tackles. When he makes those tackles, very
Yesterday there was some block in that second half. Oh, my God.
And we saw him at the peak of his powers against Ivory Coast in a match that they needed really to win that game. And I love it for him that he's getting the recognition that his efforts deserves. Because Nigeria can be a very unkind place for players who are not performing.
Exactly. And there's a whole conversation even in Nigeria as well about players born abroad who may not necessarily be given their best. In this competition, it's actually those players who are having an absolute ball.
Yeah.
So I just mentioned Truza Khan, born and raised abroad. Ola Aina.
Yeah. I think now everyone can stop criticizing him.
Ola Aina is having an absolutely amazing tournament. So good going forward. He's having skill of the day, back heel, twisted arm skill. He's having a tournament to remember. We mentioned Ademola Lookman, another one born and raised in the UK, having a tournament to remember. Another player that, in my opinion, is having a really good competition is Calvin Bassey. And they haven't started him too many times.
The difference between
him and Zaidus Zanussi, when he gets onto that left-hand side, is stark.
Yeah, it is.
Look at the way he created that second goal.
And nothing can compensate for quality in those scenarios. You can't. I mean, you either have that technical ability to win those, or you don't. I mean, and it's not just about sometimes the crosses, the decision-making and the determination of whether to go for a pass, cut back, go along with a cross. Those are things in real game time scenarios you can teach. You either have it or you don't. And I love the fact that he has slotted into the team seamlessly and at a time when Nigeria needed him.
Yesterday in particular, Onyeka also had a really good game in midfield for Nigeria. Anyway, Karim has been looking at some numbers involving this particular match as far as Nigeria's performance is concerned. Come on, Nigeria and Cameroon's performance is concerned. We talked about Cameroon not being good enough and Nigeria being too good. Karim, what have you got for us? What are we looking at regarding this particular game?
Well, I've gotten some interesting stuff, but first, let's go it this way. Coming into the tournament, if someone asks you the strength of Nigeria, what will it be?
We would say is their attack.
Their attack, but their defense is holding them down at this tournament.
Yeah. Exactly.
So from how they started the tournament, they started the tournament with a 4-3-3, and then they went to a back 3 system, playing wing backs and trying to do the counter. What they have done is that they've gone back to do a study of themselves and how better they can exploit their strengths. Yes, they can exploit their strengths and minimize their weakness. So that's why the American philosopher, the Chinese philosopher, Luatu, he says that he who...
What's his name?
Luatu.
Two. Okay, what did he say?
He says that he who knows others is wise, but he who knows himself is what?
Wiser.
Enlightened.
Oh, enlightened. That's profound.
Yes, so some people see that enlightened and wise are similar words, but they are not the same. They carry very different meanings. So enlightened carries a very deep meaning to wise. So what I'm coming to look at is how Nigeria are using the back 3 system, especially. I'm just coming to look at their defensive numbers at this tournament.
Sure. Yeah.
So against Nigeria, against Cameroon, everything they've been doing at this tournament, apart from that Equatorial Guinea game that they drew, came into force in that Cameroon game. Okay. So let's look at possession. Now, Cameroon dominated them all right by winning 58% of the possession, and Nigeria had 42%. But what did Cameroon do with the possession? Absolutely nothing. And if you are looking at Nigeria's last four games at this tournament, they've dominated possession in only one game, And
That's
that one game, they didn't win it. That was against
Equatorial
Guinea.
The one game where Nigeria dominated possession,
51%, they didn't win it.
Interesting.
They were played 63. Ivory Coast had 63% of the possession, but they didn't win that game. Nigeria. So it means that they are just putting everything together, bringing Calvin Bassey into that back three system and playing Sanusi and Aina as the wing backs. That is working perfectly for them. And if you are coming up against a team like Cameroon, who they've scored 5 goals in this tournament, all of them coming from crosses.
Wow.
So Nigeria basically...
They were prepared.
Yes. They did their scouting really well and cut out all those crosses. And if you are looking at blocks, Nigeria have made 3 blocks. It means that anything that is coming inside, they are basically taking it out.
Yeah.
If anything, Karl Toko Ikambi is trying to bring in from the right, Calvin Bassey and Sanusi will double down on him and cut it out. Then the same thing for the right side, Sanusi and the other guy. Is it Sanusi? Ola Aina and the guy playing at the right side of the back three. They cut Nkudu out. The guy, Cameroon, they send all their crosses to. And if you cut out the supply, it means that nothing is going inside the box. Let's look at duels. This is basically telling us about how much Nigeria wanted to win that game.
Who is fighting more?
Who is fighting more for
Who's winning more than 50-50 balls?
So they've won 60 of them, Cameroon 55. Close, but it basically is telling us that Nigeria were fighting for the ball and were desirous of winning the game. Look at big chances created. If you are depending more on your crosses to score goals, and they were cut out, 3 chances created by Nigeria and they've scored 2 goals. Cameroon didn't create any. It means that...
I'm told they didn't even have a shot on target.
Nothing of that sort. I'm coming to it here. So let's look at accurate crosses. If you're looking at Cameroon's first game against... the first game they drew to Guinea. Is it Guinea or Guinea-Bissau? Guinea. They sent in 8 crosses in that game to be able to score 1 goal. Against Sadio Mane's Senegal, they sent in 5 crosses. They scored 1 goal. Against Gambia, that they needed to win badly, they sent in 11 crosses and were able to score 3 goals. 2 from either set piece or from a corner kick or sort of that sort. And an own goal also coming in to contribute. Also touches in opposition box. To be able to score a goal in a game, it means that they need to touch the ball more than 10 times in the opposition box.
You need to actually have the ball in the opposition box before you can
score. Against Guinea, that they scored 1 goal. They had 20 touches in the opposition box, sent in 8 crosses. Against Senegal, they sent in 7 crosses and scored 1 goal. Against Gambia, that they needed to win and progress, they sent in 11 crosses. So basically, it means that Nigeria basically did their homework really well. They know that if Cameroon were able to score anything of a goal, it was going to come from a cross, and they cut that out. So looking at shots, Nigeria had 8 shots, 4 of them on target. Cameroon 6, none of them on target.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Now let's move on to Victor Osimhen. He's the personification of everything Nigeria did in that game. An attacker of his sort, reigning African Footballer of the Year, you'd be expecting that he would be producing some crazy attacking numbers, but he didn't. Look at total shots, 2, 1 blocked, and how fighting he is. One tackle against Omar Gonzalez, and that resulted in their goal. This is what fighting means, winning 11 duels. That got everyone talking about how much he's inspiring the team, even though he's not scoring. So let's look at the momentum, the attacking momentum. Cameroon had more of the ball, but they were not doing anything with it. They controlled more of the ball, but if you are looking at the momentum map, the peaks of the graph here is showing that at which point in the game, which team is controlling the game. This is Nigeria, and this is in green, and this is Cameroon in yellow. Looking at it, that if you are looking at which point in the game, which team is having the ball, Cameroon had more of the ball, but their momentum graph is not as high as Nigeria when they had the ball in those small moments when they were in attack. So it means that Cameroon had more of the ball, but they didn't do anything with it. And when Nigeria had it, they made very good use of it.
In English parlance, we will call it noisy possession. So what you had was noisy possession.
Yes.
You just had the ball, didn't do much with it. This is a very interesting graph because this is perfect. The time the first goal came, Nigeria didn't have the momentum. They didn't have the ball at all.
No, they didn't.
It came from absolutely nothing. And all thanks to Victor Osimhen. And thanks to you, Karim, as well. Thank you for this. That's all the lowdown on that Nigeria and Cameroon match, of course. Let me look at the results again. These are the Sunday results, obviously. You see Equatorial Guinea losing to Guinea by 1-0, and then Egypt also losing on penalties to DR Congo after a 1-1 draw. We'll take a very, very short break here on AFCON Today. When we come back, we are looking at that Equatorial Guinea versus Guinea match and Egypt versus DR Congo, and then ask the question, a little bit of a debate, really. Does not winning the AFCON or will not winning the AFCON affect Mohamed Salah's legacy as Egypt's greatest player ever? Okay? Do you think that if Salah doesn't win the AFCON, he will never be considered Egypt's greatest player ever? That question will be answered right after this. AFCON Today, live on 99.7 Joy FM, on Joy News, as well as on Joy Prime Channel. It's sponsored proudly by MTN. MTN, everywhere we go. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is AFCON Today, live on Joy Prime, as well as 99.7 Joy FM. All right. Ashitomakuro, show proudly sponsored by MTN. Now, the second round of matches, if you like, in the round of 16 happened yesterday. The first game between Guinea and Equatorial Guinea. It was very dramatic. Equatorial Guinea came into that game as the top scorers in the group stages and pretty much everybody's favorite team. But it didn't quite work out for them thanks to a really, really silly red card. That kind of, I don't know if it is right to attribute the defeat to the penalty miss or the red card. But it's a combination of issues, maybe inexperience or what have you. But it was one of those matches that I think by virtue of their performance in the group stages, a lot of people expected that they would carry that momentum into this game against Guinea. I think we all forgot that perhaps Guinea had some star players that were capable of producing some magic. But it was helped, Guinea were helped by Equatorial Guinea's own mishaps.
Mishaps, yeah. And the first one for me had to be the penalty that Emilio Nsue missed. And I think after the match, he apologized to the Equatorial Guineans and said they were sorry that they could not make it to the quarters and that they will do better. And I like the fact that he took responsibility because, yes, it's been great, but when you miss a penalty like that, when you get a penalty like that, you really have to take it because everything was going according to plan. They were in control of the game. They had essentially stifled the Guineans, who could not find a creative spark or a creative outlet. And in the absence of Naby Keita and the big centre forward for them, Girassi, it was difficult to see where that leadership was going to come from. What I thought maybe could have changed for them was someone who could be the water carrier in that attacking midfield and try to force the issue by themselves. Because tactically, the Equatorians had them figured out. And even when they had a player sent off, you could tell that still the Guineans were struggling to find a way past them because they had figured out how to stop them, especially in the second phase of their build-up. So they would knock the ball around, get to the center of the pitch, and then they realized that there are no readily available spaces. And one thing that also did not help them was the lack of runners in behind, because if you have the man's advantage, you have to force the issue. You have to make runs off the ball and try to move them out of their comfort zone or their defensive shape, but they didn't do that. But regardless, ultimately, Mohamed Dio's last-minute header, and I had to listen to the 20-year-old who won the man of the match, and he said that their people had suffered because of years of heartbreak at the AFCON, and they felt that this was the way of thanking them for staying loyal to the team and supporting them. And also, if you remember the unfortunate accidents that happened, the fatal ones that claimed no less than 6 lives in Guinea, just last week or 2 weeks ago, you would have to say
this was justice.
Yeah, this was probably justice.
Interesting. So Guinea are through to the quarterfinals, where they will face DR Congo, who accounted for Egypt in that cracking game late last night. Let's see, Egypt came into this game having not won any of their last 7, in fact 8?
Yeah.
No, any of their last 8 AFCON matches. They drew every single one of them in regulation time. One of it led them all the way to the final in 2022. They drew this one as well, Egypt, 1-1. And then they went to penalties, obviously. So DR Congo scored first. DR Congo are playing some really good football in this competition. Their finishing is still lacking a little bit. Maybe. And they were not helped by the late injury to Gael Kakuta, who has been
the creative spark in
this team.
But when you look at this team, you can see application, you can see effort, but also you can see responsibility in the sense that the team is littered with stars. Waisa, Kakuta, Cedric Bakambu, even him, despite how wasteful he's been to the team. But when you see the team play, when they start the build-up, Masuaku, you can tell everyone is getting involved. Everyone is trying to influence things on their side of the pitch and try to be the leader of that team. So, yes, they've been very wasteful, but it's the only negative to the game that they have played. Of course, they will concede chances. For every team that plays an expansive brand of football, plays on the front foot. What that means is that when they lose the ball, there are going to be spaces that the opponents will attempt to take on. But for me, look, Egypt have been very poor. And the contrast of their performances pre-tournament and their performance in the competition only goes to justify one thing, which is we should never place too much value on pre-tournament form.
Before the tournament, Egypt had gone on this wild 16-game unbeaten run.
They had won 11 out of 14 games under Rui Victoria. They had scored 34 goals in that time. So everyone assumed this was a team that was doing well, even though still
there were glaring issues.
The elephant in the room was the reliance on Mohamed Salah. So they didn't figure that part out. And we saw that in the first game, because Salah was not very mobile, they could not get the best out of him. And later on, I think that injury in the Ghana game was an injury he probably was carrying and trying to play through the pain barrier in that opening group game. But what for me, and I was very happy that Egypt lost this whole anti-football and the idea that you can slumber your way through the knockout stages of matches and then wake up because you have a golden ticket in a goalkeeper, for me, doesn't work. And I will explain why. When it comes to penalty shootout, it is not a lottery. There is a science to it. And the science of the penalty shootout favors the player who's taking the penalty shoot. The player who's taking the shot is in control of, except in windy conditions, except in extremely slippery conditions, they are in control of the direction the ball moves in. They're in control of the speed at which the ball moves. They are in control of how the ball moves, whether they are going to bend it or they are going to cushion it or they are going to apply the instep. Or
so
the knuckleball technique.
Speed,
they're in control of every single factor that is relevant to how the
goalkeeper's
goes.
Control is very limited.
The goalkeeper can only guess. Because even when you've watched thousands of minutes of clips of each player to try to guess where they are likely to send the ball, the player can change his mind at the last minute.
That's right. That is right.
So
everything you do is a guess.
Everything you do is a guess.
And it can be an intelligent guess. A guess based on records, past experience.
Exactly.
But it's still a guess.
It's still a guess, right? So the whole idea that we are going to plan on a guesswork, for me, is unacceptable. When a team prepares for a penalty shootout, and that is why, for most coaches, they would not even think about the opponent's goalkeeper. The best they will tell you is that he will try to get into your mind. But once the player steps up, and I'm saying that the conditions are not windy, the pitch is not extremely slippery, and that they are in control of where the ball goes, the goalkeeper has no chance.
Isn't it quite ironic that in the end, it came down to kicking and not saving.
No.
That actually cost them.
Exactly.
And that was Gabaski's own ability
Not
to
his
control
failure to
his
score.
own, yes.
Yes.
The direction of his own kick, the speed of his own kick. He missed the penalty. He missed the critical penalty.
Because he applied too much elevation on that. So it went to the crossbar and out over the bar it went.
One of the things, though, the smack on Mbasi's face, the Congolese goalkeeper, even before he went to take that, so this wry smile that
He
said
knew.
that,
He
you know
knew.
what, thank you for missing that. Now let me show you how it's done. And he just rolled it.
That is why for...
Apparently, he's been taking penalties in his club side.
Yeah. That is why for every player who has been scoring, even if he comes up against a goalkeeper who has a reputation of saving the kicks, he knows it is only because the goalkeeper can get into his mind and get him to, out of pressure, either underhit the ball or overhit it. But not because he knows the goalkeeper is going to guess right. Because the keeper cannot know.
Very well. The elephant in the room you mentioned, Mohamed Salah, he was waiting to get fit and come back and play the semi-finals. Now he just has to remain at Liverpool. And again, the questions are raised. What's his legacy going to be like if he doesn't win the AFCON? And was this his last chance? Because apparently now Egypt have to rebuild because they had the oldest squad at this tournament. And it looks like majority of those players, 28.7 or something like that. Majority of those players will have to be let go. A new crop of players have to come in. The good thing for him, though, is that there's an AFCON next year. So it's not like this year's AFCON is his very last. But what does that do to his legacy? He's now been to 4 AFCONs. This is his 4th AFCON. His first one was 2017.
And he's played in 2 finals.
2019, 2022, been to 2 finals in the process. Round of 16 in the other 2. What does that do to his leg? I think globally, Mohamed Salah is the biggest Egyptian footballer of all time. But in Egypt, will he be considered the greatest of all time? Those are 2 different...
I don't even agree to the idea that he's globally the biggest Egyptian footballer.
He definitely is.
He isn't.
Yes.
Because...
Who would you put there?
There are many ahead of him.
Like who?
Like Abu Trika.
Why would you say Abu Trika is the bigger global star than Mohamed Salah?
He said the biggest to come out of Egypt.
I didn't... we're not talking the most talented. We're talking
the
global star, global superstar.
As for superstardom, that's not in that.
So that's what I just said.
That's not in that. But in terms of the legendary status...
Now that's the question.
He doesn't compare. Beyond... And you see, the issue, the arguments against Salah, is not just about his inability to win. It's because he's made a habit of losing finals.
Has he?
Yes.
He lost 2 finals. He wasn't the only one on the pitch.
But that is not something you can say for the other Egyptian legends.
Ghazi was in there too.
I'm just saying that for the others who you would introduce into the conversation of the greatest Egyptians,
yes, okay.
That's not something you can hold against them.
Ahmed Hassan, Hossam Hassan.
In the modern era, the periods when Egypt have not done well at the AFCON have been periods when Egyptian football has either plateaued or gone through a difficult time. So in the early 2000s, you'd realize that football on the continent, Cameroon, Ghana, were the powerhouses. So you had, from youth level, the Black Starlets, the Black Starlights doing well in the late 90s. Even the Black Stars team that played in Mali 2002, 2000, dominated by club football. It was Hearts of Oak, it was Kumasi Asante Kotoko. Kotoko were in the Cup Winners' Cup final. Hearts, they did what they did. They won the treble. The other period when Egyptian football was a bit low was because of, I think in the early 2010s, because of the crowd disturbance and that stadium disaster. And so there was no football league for a number of years. And that was the period they did not do well. But when Egypt have turned up at the AFCON, they traditionally will do well. And they are key actors. And that for me is the sticking point. Okay. It is difficult to identify any great Egyptian AFCON winner who was not central to that success. They put their stamp on these competitions. When Abu Trika, Barakat, Hossam Hassan, Hosni, and a lot of them turn up in Accra, we knew we were in trouble. Because between 2006 and 2008, they had owned football on the continent, in terms of
both club
international football and then club football. So when you talk about Mohamed Barakat, when you talk about Abu Trika, you're going to name multiple AFCON, multiple CAF Champions League winning as their accomplishments. You are going to name them as among those who excelled at the youth level for them.
So for you...
Salah does not have that.
Okay.
And you see, you cannot... The conversation of the greatest of all time, you only enter that conversation when you have relevant international success to back you. If Messi had not won the World Cup, it would have been very difficult for Argentines because in the context of who did what for the national team, his name would not have appeared.
But you know, there are still people that still will debate that Ronaldo is better than Messi, even though Messi won the World Cup. So that international success, there are people that will still look at it and say, come on.
Based on... those opinions will always be welcome. But I'm just saying that when you take the issue of which players check the box and why they check the box, when you get to Mohamed Salah, you will find too many question marks and asterisks.
I see. Interesting. Today there are two games. Cape Verde against Mauritania, certainly my game of the round.
Yeah.
Quick thoughts on that?
My money is going to be on Cape Verde. I think we've seen them evolve as a team.
Okay.
And we've seen them even introduce a bit more discipline. In their previous appearances at the AFCON, they were very expansive, but not very street smart.
All right.
But we've seen them do that this time.
So you think Cape Verde will win? What about Senegal, CoteD'voire?
They've only met twice in the history of the AFCON. Both times, CoteD'voire have gotten the better of them. But Senegal, one thing people have not paid attention to, in the last 21 matches they've played at the AFCON, they have not conceded in 15 of those.
Interesting.
That points to a very solid defensive team that people only give credit to the attack and then their midfield.
So
and
for you?
For me, it's going to be Senegal.
Senegal to win. All right. Achu Tamaklu, thank you very much. That's it for our show today on AFCON Today. Brought to you by MTN. It was live on 99.7 Joy FM, Joy Prime as well. My name is Fentuo, Tahiru Fentuo. We're back again tomorrow. Until then, thanks for watching. Thank you and bye-bye.